Hey everybody, welcome to Write With Me. My name is Dawn Monofusco and I'm a transformational writing coach. And today I'm making sure that I didn't screw something up. Okay, no I didn't. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. One, as the title says, I'm going to go into it. She fell in love with a maniac, ways to write about abuse. Now, that's always a little kind of sketchy in terms of how to explain to people how to write about abuse. And at the same time, it can be extremely rewarding and very healing. So for Write With Me, summertime version, we'll say, for the summer, I'm going to be hosting a number of very specific classes, and you'll be getting that list in your email. Today's actual title is Empathy for the Enemy. We're going to talk about why it's so important to get across to your reader, the empathy for the villain, whether you like it or not. Even in any genre, actually. It doesn't have to just be in, in memoir. Let me make sure all this is working, because you know how Facebook is. Let me just get this dialed here. And make sure my sound is off. Okay. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And then let's see if we can share. I'm not sure if I know how to share these anymore. They just changed the way of doing things. So let's take a look. If I refresh the page, you might hear me for just a second. Be patient with me for just a second. Yes, I think I can. I'm going to share this in. It's going to let me do it. Well, we won't do it this time. We're not going to do it this time. I'm going to learn how to do all of this on I keep clicking things, on a test page, which we ran before, but I'm not interested. I want to jump right in. Who wants to jump right in? This is a good, juicy topic about how do you write about abuse, about a maniac, about crazy situations, and yet not come off as you're just complaining. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, well, of course there's abuse. Of course there's people doing mean things. Of course we've gone through trauma. I've been through trauma. Many of us have been through trauma. Being born is traumatic, right? We're floating around in mama's little, our big uterus, and then boom, we come out. So by default, life is traumatic. And then yet there's another layer. And the layer is we go through abuse. We go through things that we never thought we would go through. Now, this is for men and women. I don't want it to seem like this is just for the women in the group who have been through a lot. This is for anyone who has been through any kind of abuse. And there's a need to write it down. You're at the point finally where you can write it down. How do you know you can write it down? First, you've most likely had some therapy around it. If you're starving to write it and you just want to write it quickly, you can join my One Short Book group. You can email me and I will send you the information. We are right in the midst of updating everything, which is so exciting. So you can email me and say, hey, I want to know more about your One Short Book group. Right now, you can look at the old page that's up. It's not old, oneshortbook.com. You can just go take a look at it. It's going to have the same URL, just going to have a different platform that we're hosting it on. So either way, you can go check out more about this One Short Book, which I think is kind of cool when you're writing about trauma, when you're writing about abuse, when you're writing about something that really happened and you're ready to write about it. So first of all, I want to talk about readiness. And how do you know you're ready to write about something that was rather traumatic? Well, the first way you know is that you could at least write in your journal about it without having a breakdown. That is a huge, 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 sign that you're ready. So the first thing I want you to do is sit down with your journal and actually, as best as you can, write down what happened and feel the charge. Is the charge still there? Now, if the charge is really there, and you'll know if it's there, it's probably not ready yet to be written. And I really want to emphasize that, because there's no need to reactivate old trauma. They have found that there is no need for it, actually. It's better to move forward than to move backward. Truly, therapy allows you to look back from an observer point of view, but you don't need to immerse yourself in the trauma to rid the trauma. Actually, if you read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I don't know his name. I can never say his name. Anybody out there remember the guy who wrote The Body Keeps the Score? Hold on. Let me get you that link. There it is. The author's name is Bessel van Kolk. So, not the easiest name to say. However, he's awesome. We love him. So, is that all I have to do there? No. Okay. So here's that book, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a bit heavy at first, but if you're really going through some major trauma, this would be a wonderful book for you to read. And it has helped me incredibly, both with my writing and with processing my own trauma and learning about how to do that in a healthy way. So let's say, hypothetically, you are at the place where you're able to write about something traumatic that's part of the story that you want to write. Now, it doesn't have to be memoir, but it could be a true event that you want to put into fiction. So I'm not just talking about memoir. It could be a true event that you want to put into fiction. We want to make sure the charge is very low or gone. Maybe not gone completely. Sometimes, this little bit of writing can get you past that charge. But say you've written it in your journal and you go, wow, I can't believe that happened to me. It's kind of crazy. And I'm ready to write about it in my memoir. Awesome. So you decide, okay, I'm going to gear up and I'm going to write, maybe it's a short book, 50, 60, 70 pages. I'm really big about the short book. It's the new bestseller. If you want to know more about that, again, email me or go to oneshortbook.com. And now you've got this book. And I had a client, I'm going to change the names to protect everybody. I'm going to change the story enough that you will understand what I'm saying. So she hands me the manuscript and I'm working with her, and she's only naming the villain, the abuser, who turns out to be her dad, the devil. The devil, it starts out with a car chase and the devil is chasing her. And I'm like, is this fiction? Is this sci-fi? Is this, a strange occurrence? Is this some kind of spiritual book? The devil is chasing her and driving in this car. And eventually, upon talking to her, as a one-on-one client, she explains to me, no, that was my father and I hate him and he's the devil. Okay. So I left it at that. But then I had to understand, well, now he doesn't even feel like a human. It feels like a science fiction book. It doesn't feel close to home. It doesn't feel real. But I let it go. We were processing a little bit more. And I asked her if she was really ready for this. And she was determined, ready, wanted to get this done, wanted to write it from beginning to end. She knew her basic storyline. She knew what she wanted. It was written really for her stepmother. Her mother had died when she was very, very young. And her stepmom came into the picture. Actually, it was her, let me get this right. It was her mom's sister. So really her mom, her stepmom, was also her aunt. To make this just a little bit confusing, but pretty provocative in a lot of ways. So the stepmom, we're just gonna call her stepmom, is driving this big van, in this speed chase from the devil. And it just doesn't land because the author is not willing to, number one, name so the author is a child. Let's get this right. And she doesn't want to name her father, so she names him the devil through the whole time. She's the devil this, the devil that. And I'm like, okay. And I tried to get through to her, and I said, all this anger is not going to land with your reader unless you have some empathy for the enemy. And she was just really taken aback by that. She's like, empathy? You want me to have empathy for this man? Do you know what he did? And I did know what he did. And I might add, it was devastating. What he did to her mother and her mother/aunt. So, and what he did to the kids, There's a scene where the kids are terrified, many scenes where the kids are terrified because not only is he coming for them and is going to give them a beating, but then because their mother is trying to stop him, then we know from the child, the protagonist is actually the little girl, and then the little girl grows up. We know from the protagonist that she's terrified. She's terrified for her mother. There's this maniac in the house named the devil, and we're just in it. She's got a lot of good tension. I gotta say, the author had a lot of good tension. She definitely had her tension. She definitely knew how to tap into her anger. She knew how to do her descriptions, her settings. She knew dialogue. Like, there was a lot of strength in her writing. I mean, it was really, she did her homework. She had studied. She had, taken the coaching really well. And yet, there was something missing. And I explained to her, I said, you tell me that your mom, your stepmom/aunt, was a very, very smart woman. That back then, even though women didn't have a big say, usually she was a stay-at-home mom, but that she did incredible work on her own politically, that she was well loved in her community, that she did a little bit of hospice work, that she did all kinds of amazing things. This is this mother. And yet you pepper the story barely with what's strong about the mother. She loves to brag about the mom. The mom is amazing. Her father killed her stepmom and killed her because he wound up scaring her one day so bad that she was driving in the middle of the night and hit a tree, a very sad situation, and the doctors couldn't save her and she died. Had she not been so scared and driving so erratically, odds are she would still be alive. Thus, this author blames her father, the devil, for everything that goes on. And when I tell you the writing was super strong and it had me on the edge of my seat for a while, I was like, holy macaroni, this is intense. But here's the problem. I couldn't trust the stepmom. What would a incredibly smart, a woman who got her name in politics on her own, being a stay-at-home mom, did the research on herself, self-taught, didn't even get a high school diploma, and made big changes in her community locally and in the county, and was just this incredible, force of nature. What is a woman like that doing falling in love with an idiot like the devil? Because he was definitely not the sharpest, brick in the bundle. I don't even know how you call it. And that's where things got interesting. I said to her, so I don't understand. You're not convincing me that this woman would marry him. So all it is she's a terrible mom. She's a terrible stepmom. She's allowed this man to beat the kids. She's allowed this man to beat her. She's allowed this man to do all these awful things. And she's doing a bunch of stuff with politics. She's a self-taught woman. Sorry, I have to be the voice of reality. As this is reading, number one, it's still the devil. He still doesn't have a face. He doesn't have a description. He doesn't have anything. It's a very one-dimensional character. So in this one-dimensional character, how am I supposed to believe that the stepmom maybe wasn't in on it? Maybe there was something that the author was leaving out. Of course, I can't say this. I'm slowly asking questions, being very, very careful, going into the emotions, helping her through some of the emotional aspects of this, questioning on her whether she was ready for this. And then finally I said, why would your stepmom fall in love with the devil? She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, was he good looking? And she says, oh my gosh, he was one of the most beautiful men, and he was a football player, and it was amazing that he even got the football scholarship because he didn't have his high school diploma, but he did get the football scholarship. I was like, okay. So how did they meet? And she says, oh, the way they met was just so beautiful. She was running laps in the on the football field, and he would run next to her every now and again, and he even found out her favorite flower, her favorite chocolate, her favorite place to eat. He found that she didn't have a lot of money in her family, but he had a little bit more money, so she was wearing shoes that had holes in them. He found out the size of her foot, and then one day in this cool little beautiful love story, takes her to a shoe store to buy some shoes. And I'm like, whoa. You need to convince the reader that they fell in love. And the reader needs to go so deeply in love with that character, with the enemy, that when he turns into the enemy, when he starts drinking and getting violent and things get weird, the reader must be as heartbroken as your stepmom. And she was just like, whoa, I can't believe this. You want me to write about them falling in love? And I said, yes. On the side, just as a practice, I want you to write, make it up if you have to, you call family if you need to. You can use some imagination in memory. Remember, memoir is just memory, and memory is 50% at best. So you're allowed to use some imagination here. You don't need to know the color of the shirt or the exact car, but from that time period. And I want you to give him his name. You can use a different name if you'd like, but we want a name. And we want to trust this man as if we were so excited and so happy for her. Now, the story starts with this tension and this, big van chase with this little car and da-da-da-da. And we know that she's headed to the grandparents' house, and we know that something's going on. We don't know if they're going to die. I mean, she knows tension. She's got that dialed. She knows how to start a chapter awesome. She knows how to keep that page turning until it gets a little flat, because we're like, well, why would this happen? This doesn't make any sense. So she realized that she needed a little time. So she took a little time off. She went back to her therapist. I recommended it. And she started journaling using James Pennebaker's books, Writing to Heal. There's a lot of books out there on Writing to Heal. And she did some writing about their love story. Some writing about how they fell in love, why she was so in love with this man, how this man, at first it was manipulative. At first she was like, oh, he's just manipulating her. Oh, everything he does is a manipulation because he just wants to eventually beat her to death. And I'm like, I don't think so. Unless we find out something hidden in the storyline. But I don't think even he knew that this was going to be what happened in his life. And so she goes a little further and a little deeper. And I said, I want you to convince the reader. And here's what everyone forgets when they're going into a story about abuse, or a story that they're ready for. Remember, it's not a story that they're writing because they need to heal. You have to be healed. You have to have the story be solid, that you can speak it, that you can talk about it, that you can write it in a way that is empowering. And when you're in that empowering place, you have to remember to convince the reader of why the two people met to begin with. Why would they fall in love? What is the history? What is the pattern in the family? What's going on with the ancestral, patterns that go way back? And she hadn't really thought about it. Well, now she's figuring out, okay, well, they fell in love, and here's why. He went out of his way to get her shoes, to help her family. He went out of his way to be the best football player he could. He couldn't get very far, but he did enough so that he could get into college. And when he was in college, he took some college classes. When he was in college, he took college classes. He decided he was going to go for the money. Yes, hey, Charisma. He decided he was going to go for the money because he was like, I need to make money for my family. So he decided to be an accountant, which was very hard for him. He had to learn math, which was not his best strong suit, but he made it so. He even had his brothers help him. He had a priest help him with his math to learn how he was going to pass the test to get the job as an accountant so that he would have the money to help his family because he wanted kids so bad. So here we have this loving, beautiful man, and here we have this woman who's taken on the children of her sister who died young. And he's willing to take on the children as well, and he wants one of his own. And this gorgeous story that eventually we start to see him turn. Now we know that the beginning action scene is pretty tense. It's seemingly going to wind up where we're worried that they're going to even live, that they're going to survive. But then we drop into the hero's journey, right? The hero's journey for multiple characters here. So the hero's journey for the protagonist, who's the child, is that she gets the call to action to find out what really happened. What really happened to my mom, who is actually my stepmom, and my aunt. How did she die? How did she get herself in that position? And the devil guy, because she names the father the devil, isn't going to work. So, like I said, she goes and she finds out, she wound up asking some of her family. People really knew about it. They said, oh my gosh, we all thought this was the perfect couple. It couldn't get better than this. She was beautiful. He was the football player turned accountant. She was a political activist in her life to help with equality. She was doing such great work. She would volunteer. At the hospital to help people. This woman, her mother, was incredible. So here's this incredible woman who falls in love with this seemingly incredible man who then winds up drinking. And as far as the author was concerned, he was a shit show drunk who just wanted to beat everybody to death and wanted to be the tough guy and wanted to destroy the family. He just wanted to destroy the family and then everybody do what he says. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. People don't usually, unless they're very, very, very mentally ill, sociopathic, narcissist with sociopath, seriously, their brain the wires don't click. But it seemed that the wires were clicking. And this was, the beating didn't start, the real abuse didn't start till he was almost 30, so it wouldn't even be schizophrenia, because schizophrenia is revealed in the early 20s of a man. So what's going on here? Why is he drinking? Why is he beating? Next level, I ask her, can you go and find out what was his life like when he was a little boy? And she had never, this seems so obvious, right? But you can never really discount the obvious. Even I discount the obvious sometimes when I'm writing about my memoirs, even poetry. Poetry is a memoir. And I discount the obvious. Like, wait a second, whoa, 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 whoa. Instead of me getting upset with my enemy, I've created a villain for a small story or a short book. Whatever the villain is, whoever the villain is, how did they become the villain? Again, if it's mental illness, it's mental illness. But the way the story was written and the way things were going, what was really going on? She proceeds to discover through asking questions and doing some research on exactly where he was born, what neighborhood he was born, and how the neighborhood was just one of the worst neighborhoods in this part of Philadelphia, and how his father, of course, you probably know how we're going, was an alcoholic, but his father didn't hit him. Apparently, from what she learned, It was his grandfather that beat the living bejesus out of him. So the devil, which is her father, we'll call him Matthew. We'll call him Matthew. She gives Matthew a name. The devil now has a name. The name is Matthew. Matthew grew up in a home with alcoholism. But it wasn't his father that beat him. It was his grandfather that not only beat him, but beat his father. Even when his father was a fully grown man, he allowed his father, the grandfather, to beat him. Wow. Wow. Talk about the lineage of abuse, the pattern of abuse. So now when we go back, we're reading the story, we fall in love with Matthew. We have empathy for Matthew. But she's still really, really angry. She's like, listen, she was so mad at her father. She's like, no way am I going to give him anything for what he did to me and her little brother and to her mother. She's like, no way. And I thought that was pretty wise. I thought, no, I think you should keep your anger. Anger is a very strong emotion in writing. Not only for the person writing it, but also it's cathartic for the reader. The reader doesn't want you to get all wishy-washy. The reader doesn't want you to be like, well, now we understand why this all happened. The end. Sorry, it's a boring book. And I'm only saying that because you must simultaneously, and my one-on-one clients have heard me say this, or if you're in my groups, you've heard me say this. Actually, I don't know if Charisma, I've said this in the little group yet. You must keep your anger. And the reason is you want to contain it, you want to compartmentalize it, but anger on the page is cathartic for the reader. If this guy turned into an abusive alcoholic that was beating her stepchildren, which was also her niece and nephew, plus their biological kid, and the beatings were just disgusting. The things that he would do to abuse them and abuse her. And every time she tried to escape, every time she almost got away, she would go back. And instead of getting frustrated and seeing her as a weak woman, instead of seeing her as someone who doesn't, who cares? She just kept going back. She deserves it. God forbid I ever hear anyone say that. Nobody deserves it. But you don't want the reader to sort of just think, well, she keeps going back for trouble. You've got to get the reader to understand why she keeps going back. So when I asked that, the author said, well, he would turn back into the gentleman, the lover, the one she fell in love with, and promised to change. Always, always promising to change. Goes even deeper. Turns out his dad got sober. So he says, my dad got sober, I can get sober. But remember, his dad wasn't the one that beat him. His grandfather did, and his grandfather stayed drunk. So Matthew's deep, deep, deep wound was the anger that he had in him based on his grandfather. And there was no getting rid of that, unfortunately. Yet the reader even wanted to root for him. You got to get it so where the reader believes in that enemy. The reader says, no, he's not going to be a maniac anymore. He's going to change this time. And then we see them maybe making love. We see him going out of his way to fix it. And then boom, a couple of drinks later, and he's the devil again. He's the bad Matthew. And when we start to really understand this, we're like, oh my gosh, we're starting to hit the dark night of the soul. And if you study the hero's journey and you study the whole, especially the Save the Cat version, Jessica Brody did a great version from the book Save the Cat, where we look at it through the eyes of, say, a director for a movie. What's the opening image? The opening image is her trying to escape and finally getting to her mother's house. And we think she's safe, but they're terrified in the house and they stay quiet because they've hidden the van, locked it in the garage so he doesn't even know that they're there. And then we forget about it. A good writer will make you forget that opening image. And then when you go down the lane, memory lane, you understand why she keeps falling for him and keeps falling back into this pattern, only to finally believe him because he goes out of his way to convince her. And it's this last moment of, not last moment, but the dark night of the soul usually comes within, or it's all hope is lost. But all hope is lost comes before the dark night of the soul. All hope is lost is when we tease the audience in thinking all hope is going to be lost. The dark night of the soul is when there's no getting out of it. And so remember, the writer is the daughter, is the little one. And the mom says, don't worry, something, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. I'm just going to talk to him one more time. But she's frazzled. She's got the kids safe. And instead she drives out and she hits a tree and dies. That would be the dark night of the soul. Then how does the protagonist get to the next level when all hope, everything is gone? Everything is gone as far as she's concerned. And then you see slowly how, because of that incident, the family wakes up, the friends wake up, people realize how truly disturbed and really mentally ill Matthew is. And there's no coming back from that. And they know that they have to keep him away from the children. And then eventually what happens is he winds up disappearing, never to be found again, which still keeps her on edge sometimes because she doesn't know if he's alive or dead. Now, I've actually taken 2 books and smooshed them together to, make sure the identities of my clients are not revealed. I changed a lot around there. But one thing remains absolutely the same, and that is that they tried to write about, abuse or how what did I call it? Hold on. The villain. Sorry, just my screen just went blah blah blah. You really want, if you fall in love with a maniac, that's a great. I'm like, we know there's trouble there. But it can't just be this one-dimensional thing where you're not adding in the empathy for the enemy, the empathy for the villain. What did he go through or she go through? It's a she, what's going on deeper than that? What is going on in the lineage of their family? What's going on in their jobs? Why did they fall in love with this person in the first place? You've got to hit on all those emotions. And the number one thing is you've got to convince the reader, 100% convince the reader that there's a reason they fell in love. And that reason is valid. And that you know the reader is in love with the villain. You must get the reader to fall in love with the villain, whether it's fiction, whether it's memoir, whether it's sci-fi, whatever it is. Because then the reader becomes as terrified and as scared as the protagonist. And then you've got yourself a page turner. You also want to get the reader convinced, if this is part of the story, you want to get the reader convinced that there's another chance, that maybe this will work out before we hit the dark night of the soul, right? Before we hit the really, 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 really bad place. Now, this is for a very specific book, right? We're talking about abuse, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, this is very specific. The dark night of the soul in other genres we'll talk about does not have to be something terrible, terrible, terrible. The dark night of the soul has different layers. But for a book like this, if you really want to write about abuse, and by the way, it is so good for the reader, the empathy that you show to the reader, by going through this process of being willing to have empathy for the villain, really allows the reader to not feel alone, right? You're going to have so many people reading your book going, oh my gosh, you get me. You get me. Because if you're reading a book, say you've been abused, and you go into reading a book, and then the book is just, this asshole, this jerk off is, beating up somebody. And I'm sorry, I'm going to use a he as a beater upper. It could be a she or a they. But the reader is going to be like, well, that's not me. My abuser was much nicer, and that's why I fell in love with him. And, if they knew my whole story, they would understand. But if you give the reader the whole story, if you give them all the layers of falling in love, of being disillusioned, of how things break down slowly, they don't break down quickly, then the reader goes, wow, I'm not alone. And that reader is going to share that book with everybody. And that's what we call great writing. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. This is one of my favorite topics. I'll be talking about it a lot, on and off, here and there. We'll talk about, how we give empathy to the bad guys. There are little tricks too, like say the protagonist is a bad guy and they're bad guys. Well, then there has to be an even badder guy. And you'll see that in Pulp Fiction if you ever watch that movie. There's a lot of movies that do that. And it's nice to watch movies and see storylines when you're writing your books. So yes, Charisma has it right. There is a deeper piece to abuse. And it's very important to include that. And to fall in love, you have to find where's the love that happened before the abuse so that the reader can feel like you get that. The reader feels like, wow, this person really gets me. It's not that simple. And then you also give the reader hope, and you give the reader inspiration and motivation, and hopefully the ability to get out of their own situation. So that is it for today. And I'm actually going to be doing a survey on which genres and storylines you might want me to talk about. And I'm going to offer anyone who wants to, I'm going to put it up, I'll probably put it up tomorrow. We're going to offer a link. If you're on my email list, make sure you get on my email list. If you're not on my email list, just go to dawnmontefiusco.com, and we moved. Hold on, let me see. Where do we put the sign up? We moved the sign up place, and I just have to find it now. Oh, it doesn't look like we put it in there. Just go to contact and write to me, because we're redoing my website a bit. So if you're not on my email list, if you're not on my email list, just stay in this, make sure you like this page, make sure you, maybe you want to Write From Your Heart group. You can find a lot there as well. I'm going to put it right here. So just be a part of my little, swimming, beautiful fan base, my audience. I love you all so much. You're going to find out in the next 48 hours. We're going to have links up there, and you can submit a storyline that you're having trouble with or that you want some feedback on. And I will go in I'll read I'm going to pick ones. So they're going to be chosen by me and my assistant. We're going to pick the ones that probably need they have big holes in them. And I'm going to intuit. I'm going to use my intuition, and I'm going to use my psychic energy, and I'm actually going to just get enough information, or maybe I don't even need to use all of my energy, just my brain and my creativity, but I am going to feel into it. A lot of people say that I somehow managed to see and get visions of their story that was in their head. And so I'm going to help you create your hero's journey for your book. So it'll be a fun exercise. I'll show where the weaknesses are. I'll show where the strengths are. And we're going to see if we're going to do that, twice a month or once a month. We're going to have a ball. So once a month, we're going to have an interview. At least once, maybe twice, 2 times a month, we're going to have the, oh, my dog's barking, the outline review. And then I'm going to also do, I've already done it, so I have to go back and look at it. I'm going to look at the top 25 subjects you want me to go over this year. So it's going to be structured. It's going to be great. And I'll even have a link to where you can find those titles of the classes that I will be hosting, so you can come in and grab the class that works for you. Remember, they're always here. I don't take them down, and they appear on my blog on dawnmontefusco.com. Technology just puts it everywhere, and it's more like, hiya. But if you love this, thank you. Please share it. And I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station. And we're going to be as consistent as it gets from now on. We've got all of our ducks in a row. Quack, quack, quack. So I can't wait to see you next week at 3:30. Bye.